Hey guys, it's me, Dr. Samina Rahman, Gynogirl. I'm here to talk about a quick little thing on what I saw last week with the Oscars. So we're going to talk about Ozempic, Oscars, and orgasms. So if you're intrigued, stay tuned after the introduction and let's get at it. Okay, so what is a gynecologist like me talking about Ozempic, Oscars, and orgasms is obvious why. I specialize in sex med, but let's talk about how they're linked and why I'm talking about it. First of all, some of you might know I used to live in Los Angeles. I lived there for about 5 years right after residency. It was my first job out of residency, and I was on the University of Southern California faculty. It was amazing. I loved it, but I got to really get involved in sort of the LA scene in a lot of ways. I got to go to the Emmys once. It was fun. I'm very much into fashion looks and everything. And so I have to give a shout out to all the great fashion at the Oscars, which includes my girl mindykaling. We share the same birthday. I loved all of her looks, and she looks wonderful. So I hope people stop hating on her for going through a weight loss journey in whatever capacity she did that. I loved how Malala looked. Wow, she looked wonderful and so stylish in that Ralph Lauren outfit. I loved, of course, I have to give a shout out to Malaysian sister Michelle Yao. She looked wonderful. She was the first Asian American female to win an Oscar. And I love what she said, never tell anyone that you're past your prime, which is very inspirational, especially for those of us that are sort of entering midlife and wondering, like, there's so much more we want to do. There's so much more we want to accomplish. Very inspirational. So shout out to her. And she looked wonderful doing it. And then, of course, the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, winning all the awards. Ki Hao Kwan, everybody did wonderful. It was a great night for Asians around, South Asians, the Tamil community celebrating the best song, the 3 R's. That was a great performance. You can't lie about that. So, Natu Natu. And then for the best documentary, I mean, it was a great night for those of us that don't always get to see representation that reflects us. So that's one reason I wanted to bring up the Oscars. Of course, I love the fashion. The second reason I wanted to bring it up is because Jimmy Kimmel, who was the host, he said, wow, everyone looks so great tonight. Looking around the audience, it makes me wonder, is Ozempic right for me? And so then that made me think about the questions I get asked about Ozempic in my office, and I do prescribe it for certain patients. I see a lot of PCOS in my office. I see a lot of brown, Black, Latina, white women who are entering the midlife and maybe are pre-diabetic or diabetic and are looking for ways to get rid of midsection visceral fat, which is a big problem. And with PCOS being an analogous metabolic process, a lot of patients do end up as diabetics in those categories too. So let me talk about Ozempic for a minute. Ozempic is a weekly injectable medication. You probably have seen the commercials. Oh, Ozempic. I'm not a singer. The reason I bring it up, it's incretin. It's a GLP-1 agonist, which means it's a glucagon-like protein, which means that it helps your body to sensitize insulin, right? So insulin is one of those hormones that we need to kind of metabolize glucose, and a lot of patients become resistant to insulin. So you get this medication, which essentially, and the long and short of it is, kind of slows down your gastric motility. So the bowel function slows down a little bit. So that's why you get the constipation and GI symptoms associated with it. You have early satiety, meaning that you get full faster, less of an appetite, basically. So those are the big things with Ozempic. And yeah, it allows for weight loss, and other GLP-1 agonists and incretins are out there and are for weight loss alone. Ozempic is actually FDA approved for diabetes because I screen all my PCOS patients, my midlife patients. I'll see them as diabetics or pre-diabetics or diabetics, and they need to go see a primary care. And sometimes I'll start them on Ozempic because I have a lot of family, again, South Asian. We carry 25% of the world population, but close to 60% of the world heart disease, and that's secondary to diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol issues. I should do a whole other video on this because of the burden in my culture with diabetes. I have a lot of family members on this medication. I've been able to study and navigate the effects, the side effects. You can't take it if you have a family history of medullary thyroid cancer. You have to really watch the dosing and go up slowly. There's a lot of things involved with really prescribing it. I usually do prescribe it and have some patients follow up with their primary care if they get covered, which most of my diabetic patients do. But I do screen all my South Asians, PCOS patients for, pre-diabetes and diabetes. We know that patients in those categories, either midlife or PCOS and beyond, do have a higher rate of heart disease, and heart disease is still the #1 killer in women. So that's my spiel about Ozempic. So it works as a weight loss drug too. That particular drug is not FDA approved for that purpose, and so there's a big shortage, and there's a lot of issues around, the shortage around Ozempic and the ethical issues around prescribing it for non-diabetics. That's a whole different discussion. But the other thing that comes up when people talk about Ozempic in Hollywood is Ozempic face, which isn't really a thing. It's not a secondary side effect to Ozempic, but when you're in your midlife or approaching midlife, we know that estrogen is such an important component for collagen and your face and everything. And so what happens is patients that sometimes are more heavier set, the fat in their face makes them look a little younger. But when you start losing weight with like diet, exercise, Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever your mechanism is, gastric bypass, the weight loss in your face, when you lose that fat, it actually makes you look older. So there's a lot of patients that get this Ozempic face, is what it's being referred to as, but it's just secondary to weight loss, especially in the midlife, where this fat accumulation actually makes you look younger, and then you lose that, and then you look older. So it's not a real thing, but it is a thing related to weight loss, but not just because it's Ozempic. Then patients in Hollywood then have to go get filler and all this stuff. So there's a whole thing about that. So that is the way the Oscars and the Ozempic is related. But how it's related to sexual function is this, that there are some studies out there that demonstrate male or female patients who lose weight tend to have an improved body image. They are able to use different types of positioning when it comes to sex, more of a dopamine, rush, are able to feel better about themselves. And yes, they may have enjoyable sex and enjoyable orgasms. And because sometimes when you lose the weight, you're able to access your erogenous zones a little bit easier, then yes, that's how the Ozempic and the Oscars and the orgasms are related. So I just wanted to bring that up because it is a controversial topic about using, Ozempic for weight loss, which it is in the category of drugs. There are other incretins that are, FDA approved for weight loss. Ozempic is not one of them, but because it's like a popular trademark, it gets slaughtered in the media more. But it is a good drug from what we can tell, and incretins have been used for decades. This is just weekly subcutaneous medication. Some people, yes, they do abuse for weight loss purposes, and other patients are using it to keep themselves healthy. We know that you get a great cardiac profile secondary to it. When I use it in my office, I have patients that have PCOS, that have midlife diabetes, that I'll talk about all the other options where they can go straight to their primary. Sometimes they know about it and they want to get started on it. And if they're diabetic and they're going to get covered, I'm happy to help them get started on that. Hopefully over time, when they feel better about themselves and they improve their cardiovascular system, then they can have improved sexual functioning and orgasms. And there we have it. Oscars, Ozempic, and orgasms. Anyway, that's all I have to say today. I just wanted to do a quick little thing about it because I really enjoyed the Oscars this year, and it was very favorable to watch because particularly there were so many first times and a lot of praise for the Asians and South Asians that really made a difference in the community this year. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to see you guys again next week, hopefully with a new video on clitoris, so stay tuned. The other thing is I should say this more often, so please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. All right, take care. Bye-bye.